Break it down, 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 down.
Hello.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Blockument Crypto Education through Everyday Conversation. Woo. I'm Nate Talbot, Executive Director of Detroit Blockchain Center. And to my right is Mrs. Hoddle.
The way you said it. I'm Ashlee Rose. I'm an everyday mother. I'm an online reseller, and I'm on a journey to figure out what in the heck is all of this crypto, blockchain stuff about. So let's figure it out, shall we?
Freedom. Yes. Shall we?
Shall we?
I feel like we haven't recorded in forever, even though it's been the regular.
It feels like it's been a long time, right?
Yeah, it does. Oh, well, maybe we have to go to a daily show.
Okay, well.
Or maybe not.
If we do that, we're going to need a sponsor, okay?
All right. Well, you heard it. DM us or something. All right. What block time are we recording this episode at?
Yes, the block height is 819,580.
Mm-hmm.
Getting up there, folks. The block size is 1.68 megabytes, which is comprised of 3,300 transactions.
All right.
And the total subsidies and fees on this beautiful block are 7.12 Bitcoin, which equals 282,379 US dollars. The lucky winners of this block are Ant Pool.
Ant Pool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know with Ant Pool, I don't know if it's so much luck as it is just hash rates.
Yeah.
There's been a lot around this block height here over the past few, 1,000 blocks or so. There's been a lot of conversations in mining. Have you heard about any of it?
Nope.
No, it's been.
I mean, I don't know.
Tons. We had a new pool enter the space called.
Really?
Yep, it's actually an old pool that's rebirthed itself via funding from Mr. Jack Dorsey from Twitter fame, Cash App fame, Square fame, Block fame.
What was the old pool and what's the new pool?
Oh man, I can't remember exactly the name of the old pool, but it's rebranded now as Ocean Pool. Originally started and still maintained by a guy named Luke
Skywalker?
Dashner or Dash Jr. Depends on who you're talking to. He's the only one who seems to know how to pronounce his name the right way. Mm-hmm. But if you might call him Luke Dashner, which I think is the proper, but it might be Luke Dash Jr. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he's a Bitcoin contributor for years and years and years. So he's well known around the space. And they started a new pool called Ocean Pool with what they're branding as a new way to do transparent mining if you're going to use a pool.
And it's
caused a lot of stir-ups on exactly what that means.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is right now, we have Ant Pool, right?
Right.
So there's been some clarifications happening over the past few weeks on what it means to be a Bitcoin miner.
Okay.
Right. So traditionally, right, you would call yourself a miner even though you're a miner, you're pointing it towards a pool like Ant Pool, right? Mm-hmm. Which means you're not really a miner, you're a hasher. Right? You're doing, remember all mining is guessing the number, right? And that's called hashing.
So would that be you're loading out your computing power?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. You're leasing your hash power to the actual miner. You're not doing mining.
Now I said computing power, not powder. Mm-hmm. Is that different than hash power, or they're
well, it takes
same?
computer. The only way you can do the hash is by spending computer power, and the only way you can spend computer power by spending energy.
Okay.
Hence the proof of
Just
work.
wanted to make sure I didn't want to sound silly, and other people sound silly.
It's. We're talking about definitions, so it makes sense to be clear on the definitions. So one of the big differences, this isn't the topic of the show, but we'll just cover it real quick as we look at the block. So what Antpool is the miner, and what a miner actually does, right? They look at the mempool, they pick transactions, they make sure they're valid, they build a block header which has certain information like the final hash of the last block. That's how they're connected, right? They award themselves any of the Coinbase that they want, that 6.25. They don't have to give themselves, they can skip it. They don't have to give it to themselves. They could just skip it. They could give themselves part of it. They can say, I only want 3 Bitcoin, not 6.25 Bitcoin, right?
And that's like for them.
That's for them.
Like because they are managing it, or?
Yeah, well, what you say subsidy and fees every week, right? That's the subsidy piece. How much of the free Bitcoin do you want? The newly minted Bitcoin do you want? Most people would just pick all of this currently 6.25, right? So Antpool will build the block, and if you're a miner there, you're just contributing hash rate, right? That's a point of centralization, right?
Because they get to choose what transactions go in the block.
Right. And this is why the sort of the controversy piece comes up, because there's been a couple pools, and it's turned out a lot of the pools, I won't say all of them, have been like censoring blocks. They might censor them for OFAC compliance, right? Government regulatory compliance. They might censor them because they don't like the activity, like ordinals. If you didn't check our, what our ordinals episode, you can go check that out. Maybe they don't like those, so you censor those. Censor is a very strong word.
Yeah.
If you're the miner, just like if you're a business, you get to pick what products are in your store, right? You don't got to sell every brand of cookie. You're not censoring Oreos if you only carry, Chip Ahoy or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you're a pool, you're representing hundreds or thousands of miners, right? And so one step Ocean is taking is they're publicly issuing their block template before you contribute your hash rate. So if you're pointing your miner at them and contributing hash rate, you can see how they're building their block. And they are they are not currently, but they are about to be starting to, they're going to censor blocks, because Luke is not a big fan of ordinals. So he's not going to censor them for government regulatory things.
You're just going to give him the cold shoulder.
Yeah, but no, well, you won't, if you're trying to mint an ordinal, you won't make it into an Ocean block. But it's not really censorship, because Antpool will probably still take it. They want the money.
Got it.
So you're not being censored. It's just this business told you no, go to a different business.
Right.
Right? And that's how the censorship resistance is. It's not that every miner and every pool have to accept every transaction. Right. It's that there's so many miners and pools. Right. If one decides not to pick up your transaction, another might.
Right.
So we'll probably do some shows around this as this develops, because there's talk about putting Stratum v2, which is really interesting. It's a way to help the hashers actually build their own blocks. Okay. The way Ocean Pool's doing their payments to the miners. Usually it's very custodial.
Yeah, I have lots of questions, but I'm going to refrain myself.
So, yep.
So
we'll do a whole show around this. Yep. But today we're talking about what? What's the real question?
Are cryptos digital stocks? And I know this is probably going to ruffle some feathers with that question, but that's why we're here. We're going to get some clarity. We're going to see what's what.
Yes, what's what. The audience likes it. What? Well, what's your take? Is a crypto a digital stock?
Okay, so this is exactly why I thought to do this topic, because I was thinking the other day, I was like, so stocks are equity in a business. And then I'm like, but cryptocurrencies are supposed to be a currency, not necessarily a business, but it has to be ran. So like some of them are essentially a business because it's owned by one person or group of people. So could it be like if similar? I don't know that they are exactly the same, but I think that they're like similar.
All right. So let's break it down. First, I think let's clarify some of the terms. So
Yeah,
you don't
I know
have
it's
to
gonna be
be a corporate specialist to understand the words we're saying, right? So you're like, stocks are equity in business. Equity is
like ownership.
right, just your share of an ownership, right? 10 people own a house, right? And they own an equal percentage of the house. That means they each own 10%. They have 10% equity in the house. They own 10% of the house. So that's equity. All right. You also said that if a crypto has one owner, so therefore they're issuing stocks in their ownership share. Is that what you're
Kind of.
insinuating?
Yeah, like I don't know, almost like fundraising, or like then you get like voting power. I don't know.
Well, we had the
But they're all
big
different.
phase.
They're all structured a little differently, so that's hard to just like lump them all.
Well, for everybody white knuckling it right now and gritting their teeth like, oh, what is this? I would first state in the broadly context of what it means to be a crypto, not technically, just what people perceive. If one person or a small group of people own it, is it really crypto?
Well, exactly. I would say no.
No, I would say no as well.
But I guess I'm trying to like speak.
But we're talking
for-
broadly and how people we're talking perceptionally, not
Right.
technically.
Right.
Technically, to be crypto means you use cryptography.
Right.
And you probably are using some kind of distributed database, most likely a blockchain,
Right.
not necessarily a blockchain.
Right.
You're using cryptography to drive a blockchain, right?
Right.
So yeah, you could have one person technically. We have what's called permissioned blockchains.
Right.
Hyperledger is a framework for that. You might have heard of Hyperledger. It was an initiative by several companies, the biggest one being IBM at one point. This is when you hear about like Walmart was doing supply chain. They built off of Hyperledger. So that would be a concept of a blockchain where only one or very few people controlled it.
Right.
So
And
that
so then-
aside,
Yeah. Okay.
right, being the broader point, I would say if only a few people hold it or one person owns it, it's not crypto in the first place. But that aside, let's look at what it really means to hold different types of crypto. And you had hinted around this right before we went on air. There are different kinds of use cases for crypto, right? What are some of those?
Well, money.
We got money.
Maybe like keeping track of real world assets.
All right, so like tokenization or
Yeah. What else? I'm trying to think. Like finance. Would that be just money?
you'd have to define finance. Are you using our definition that we've aired several times on the show? What finance
Yeah, like
is?
playing around with it, like smart contracts.
So you would call a smart contract a token?
Oh my God, I'm getting grilled here.
I think no. I think you're close. I think you're just missing maybe one major.
Like NFTs?
I would call that a tokenization, a real world
Okay.
asset,
Okay.
or a representation of a unique digital asset, but still a tokenization. So we got money, tokenization, and I think you're missing one key realm that everything else would fit
Money,
into,
tokenization.
which is it was the rallying cry of like 2018, which is you got to have a utility token.
Oh, yeah.
Got to have utility.
Wait, okay, so utility.
So you
is
got
separate from
money,
all of those.
tokenization, and utility.
Oh, okay.
And maybe we break those down real quick, real brief, right?
I was trying to think of all the utilities.
Yeah.
I'm like,
But they all just go under there. So you got
Okay.
money, which is pretty simple, right? This is your Bitcoin, your Monero, your Litecoin. People use it to transfer value amongst each other.
Would that be stable coins too? Yeah, right?
Sure.
Oh gosh, am I really taking off the...
I would actually put stable coins more in the tokenization. Most
really?
stable coins, yeah.
Oh God, this
There's
is going to go
different
in a whole
flavors of
different
stable
direction.
coins.
This whole podcast.
Well, again, this could be its own episode, but
Yeah.
we won't make it that, right? So you
Okay.
got money, which is how I'm going to define money for this thing is something like a Bitcoin, where its only utility is the token derives value in and of itself in some shape, form, or fashion. For Bitcoin, it's through proof of work. For Monero, it's through proof of work. For most of them, it's through proof of work is what derives the underlying value,
Okay.
right? But that's all it's good for. You can't really do much else with it. Then you have tokenization, which is, all right, let's take a token. Normally, you would make it non-fungible, non-unique, right? Fungible just means uniqueness, right? So it's a non-fungible type token. People associate those with JPEGs and whatnot, but that could also be when you talk about real estate, putting your house deed and have a token represent it, and NFT would represent that. Stable coins, especially backed stable coins, because they just represent an actual dollar in a bank account someplace. So it's just a representation of a real world asset, right?
Okay.
And that's why I put it under the tokenized column. You would have to be an algorithmic stable coin, one that derives its value through an algorithm, not through a backed. We haven't seen one of those that has ever worked for more than about 12 months. So those don't really exist.
Okay.
But if
Yet.
you could make one exist, then that would be money.
Okay. Okay.
And then we had utility, and that's a token that exists in order to drive some bigger mechanism, right? So you might think of something like Chainlink. We talked about oracles in the show. And you use the Chainlink token to pay for the data feed that the oracle is providing, right? The token's how you derive value within itself. Or there's, you might have an exchange, a decentralized exchange, where it uses its own token to help secure the actual pools of liquidity, the pools where all the money sits when people want to do swaps. And the only way to interact in that is to have its own token, which is how you provide value to the people providing liquidity, providing the money for you to swap around and whatnot, right?
Okay.
So you got those three types of assets. So when you talk about a money asset, are those like stocks? When you talk about a Bitcoin, a Monero, a Zcash, whatever, are those stocks? Well, holding one Bitcoin, right? What does that give you ownership share of? What vote as a stock, right? If I have a
Right.
stock, I have one vote, and if there's 1,000 stocks issued, right, I get 1 out of 1,000 votes.
Well, I guess it would be, I don't know. That's the thing. Would it be that you have say, like, you have say of, well, consensus, and then also like what goes in the block if you are, I guess, a true miner, as we.
Well, miners and holding supply, you could be a miner and only have what's in the block subsidy. Let's go to like Monero, right? Whichever one you're most comfortable with. Any of the money assets, Bitcoin, any of them.
Yeah, any of them.
So if I have, there will never be more than 21 million. Right now it's estimated to be, I think, someplace in the 17 to 18 million Bitcoin that are still around. It's probably even lower. But there's circulating and not lost and locked up,
Yeah.
not already mined. There's probably about 17 to 18 million Bitcoin floating around, right?
Okay.
You hold 16 million of them,
Oh boy.
right?
Okay.
What say do you have in the Bitcoin? Holding those 16 million Bitcoin, what vote do you have that nobody else has?
I think none.
None. Holding money in these types of systems does not equate to say, right? You
Yeah.
have to be a miner because somebody still has to, every time a transaction happens, somebody still has to put that transaction in a block, produce the proof of work, right? And
Yeah.
charge a fee for that.
Yeah.
That's not going to make them necessarily the largest Bitcoin holder, but they have way more say, right? A small Bitcoin miner who runs, let's say, 1 out of every 10,000 blocks. They have more say in the Bitcoin network on a technical aspect than a Michael Saylor who like buys thousands of Bitcoin every couple months.
Holding a big
right?
bag.
Right. So he holds more Bitcoin, but they have more say.
Right.
If you're a user and you use it every day, you might only have a half a Bitcoin in your whole stash that you sort of use and resupply, right?
Yeah.
You have more say because you're actually using it than I don't know, I don't want to keep picking on Michael Saylor, than me, who's just a hodler, right? I just buy it and hold it. So I don't use it at all. Right? So you as a user have more say. Or maybe I'm a hodler, maybe I use it too, but I don't run my own node.
Wait, but why does the user have more say?
If you're a user, I'm going to count on as user as somebody who runs their own node, right? Because you get to pick what software is running.
Okay,
you get to help confirm what are valid transactions and not.
I thought you were referring to like someone who spends like.
No. Not just spend, but if you're spending from your own node, right? So if you have your own node, you have more say than somebody who keeps all their stash on Coinbase. If you don't run your own node, but you're using I hate the word self-custody because we should assume all custody is self-custody unless otherwise specified, right? But if you you just have your 12 words, you have your private key.
Yeah.
You might not run your own node. You have more say than somebody who keeps all their stash on Binance or Cash App, right? So
and
when it comes to the money part, the vote that you would have with a stock, you don't get that by holding a token, by holding Bitcoin, by holding XMR, by holding Litecoin, by holding Dash.
You get it by running a node.
You get that. You get your vote by running a node. And it's not really a vote. Because you don't really care what anybody else is doing.
Right.
As long as a trick with language.
Okay.
Not so much a trick, but a truth of language. Like people like, in my day, when I was growing up,
Back in my day.
every time you said ain't, the teacher would be like, ain't a word.
Yeah.
Ain't is not a word.
Ain't a word.
Right. But what's the definition of a word?
Yeah.
As long as
Have you asked Shakespeare?
two or more people understand what you're conveying,
Yeah.
it's a word. Doesn't matter that Merriam puts it in a dictionary or not, right? So you knew what I was talking about? Yep, it's a word. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And
Now, whether or not it's like a normalized, accepted word.
right.
That's a whole other podcast.
Well, it's the same thing when you're running your own node, right? You don't really care what the net, as long as there's another node that you're transacting with.
Yeah.
As long as it respects.
Right.
It's valid, right? Now, you might be out of consensus with the rest of the Bitcoin network, but this is where you get forks. So if we use Bitcoin as an example because it has the most popular forks, right? You have Bitcoin. People wanted to change Bitcoin with a specific block size. They didn't like that. They switched the software. People who wanted the bigger block size, which is now known as Bitcoin Cash, they use a different software.
And that was
they can't
their,
talk to Bitcoin core nodes anymore.
And that was their say/vote because they were like, okay, well, we want it this way, so we're going to keep running it but over here.
Right. But see, it's not a vote where you get to change popular consensus. It's just, hey,
if
this is
you're
what
with
I
me,
want to do,
let's
this is
go.
what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Follow me if you
And then the market will value it, right?
Yeah.
So that's how voting works in money systems. When it comes to token systems, and these are the easiest ones to sort of address.
Okay.
Nope, we're going to address that last. When it comes to utility,
Yeah, always save the layup for last.
right.
I appreciate it too because I'm sure my brain's going to break here.
When it comes to utility, what is that token really representing? Well, it sort of depends on what the utility is. So if you're like we said, if you're a DEX,
Decentralized exchange.
a decentralized exchange, you might issue your own token as a security measurement. So
Are you talking like an FTX?
no. Everything I'm going to talk about is going to be purely at least theoretically a decentralized spectrum.
Okay.
There is zero exchanges that fall. FTX,
Yeah.
definitely not.
Yeah.
But not even like a Kraken or
I'm
one
really
of the
making waves
good
on
players.
this podcast.
Right. Yeah. We're not talking about any of them, even though they'll issue their own token, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where my brain first went, but I wanted to like.
Well, there's
clarify.
different. Well, what's the utility, right? The utility, like I brought up Chainlink earlier, the utility of a Chainlink is to use that token in order to pay for the good that the smart contract theoretically is providing. We're going to pretend everything I'm talking about, to keep conversation simple. Everything I mentioned, we're going to pretend it lives in this harmonious state of decentralization.
Okay.
It's somewhere on the spectrum away from the centralization side.
So it's in utopia.
Yeah, so somebody who's like, well, Chainlink only runs off of 5 multi-sig and one person owns 3 of them. Cool. But for the sake of this conversation,
Yeah,
we're going to pretend everything lives in the decentralized world.
Okay.
And so Chainlink, that link token, would be paying for the usage of the smart contract.
Okay.
All right. So now the only argument is, since Chainlink is based off of Ethereum, right? The only question is, does Chainlink really need its own token, or could it have used the underlying Ethereum
I was literally
token?
just going to ask you that.
But that's an economic question and separate from this show.
tokenomic question?
It's a tokenomic question and separate from this show. But that would be
Okay.
the only argument. But they're using it for use case,
Right.
versus what was popular in 2017, right? Was the or 2016, 2017, 2018 was the ICO boom, right? Initial coin offering. That sort of aligns closest to what you're talking about. And this is honestly
With
what
stock?
90% of 95% maybe of especially all non-money cryptos fall into, is it's a fundraising mechanism.
Right.
I want to start my own decentralized something, but I don't have the time to develop it or the know-how, so I got to pay somebody, and I don't have the funding to do it. How can I raise money? Well, we see Bitcoin worked, so we'll bootstrap with some finance. This is how
Yeah.
Ethereum started, right?
wow.
They were like the first ICO, and they took Bitcoin. And if you give us some Bitcoin,
Yeah.
so we can sell it to pay some developers and stuff and spend our own time working on it, then we'll promise you X amount of Ethereum, right?
This
That's-
new thing that we're developing.
This new thing.
Okay.
Once it gets developed, you'll get so many coins, right?
So you'll have. So would that? Okay. So that would be considered almost. Would that be considered like a not ownership? I was gonna say like.
Well, here's the key difference, right? That is considered a security now. This is where the SEC is going after just about everybody. And there's not a world where I'm on team SEC. However, some of the cases they bring against individuals are valid because they are securities, right? And I'm not taking Ethereum most likely was a security in the
what
issuance.
Is it? Can
But
I ask what a security exactly like? What?
So a security just means you're holding a representation of future value,
Okay.
right?
Oh,
So
then yes.
this is why they use the orange grove thing. I grow the oranges, right? I'm not gonna sell you the land. I want to sell you the oranges that I'm going to sell to the grocery store. I want to share in that revenue with you. You probably gave me some money at some point. So you give me $1,000 today, knowing I'm going to sell some oranges in 2 months, and we're going to split the cost.
Okay.
So I give you a receipt for the $1,000 you gave me, and that receipt is a promise that I'm going to finish growing the orange, pluck the oranges, sell the oranges, and then share any profits with you, if any.
Okay.
That receipt is a security, and this is what people confuse stocks and crypto a lot with. That security in and of itself does not give you a say in how I run my orange grove, right?
Okay.
It just gives you a promise of future value.
Okay.
And that's the key difference between a security
Okay.
and a stock. A stock is also a security,
Okay.
but it gives you a vote in the operations of the business. So not only do you get to share in the future profits of the business, you also have a say in how the business is run. You vote for the CEO and the board. You make certain decisions.
So a stock is a security is not a stock.
Correct.
Okay. And you can sell securities and you can sell stocks, and they're two different things.
Yes. And so if you go back to the example, let's go to an example of, what's a good one? Let's say there are some proof of stake systems. I'm trying to think if this is the avenue I want to go down. There are these things called DAOs.
Oh boy, okay.
So Uniswap is a decentralized exchange, right?
Okay.
They did not always have, they have a token called Uni.
Okay.
It did not always have its own token because there isn't really a good reason for a DEX, a decentralized exchange, to have its own token in and of itself, right? However, if you want to have this protocol and you want to make this decentralized protocol and you want to make protocol level decisions, like we did a show about DEXs and how they work. So if I get a little confusing, go look at our show, like what is a DEX, to sort of get what we're talking about, what liquidity pools are and all that.
Yep.
But if you have a Bitcoin and if you have we use Ethereum and Chainlink, so there's two I've been talking about.
Okay.
If you have an Ethereum Chainlink swap pool, right? I got some Ethereum, I want to buy some Chainlink with my Ethereum, and I want to use a decentralized exchange. I go to that exchange, somebody has to put their own Ethereum and their own Chainlink in these pools that allow the swapping to happen.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Those are called liquidity providers.
Yep.
Now, how much, when I do that swap, Alice and Bob are the liquidity providers, right?
Okay.
Alice gave some ETH, Bob gave some Chainlink. When I go put my ETH in, I'm using Bob's
That
Chainlink.
liquidity, yeah.
Right, I'm using that liquidity. So how much should Alice and Bob get for that? For providing the liquidity, what percentage should they get?
Yeah. Like
Well,
so.
by default, the protocol might say 0.2%. It's a trading fee, right? So I'm going to pay for the service of swapping that, and whoever provided the liquidity will split that payment. But what if 0.2% is determined by all the liquidity providers? 0.2% isn't enough. It should be 0.4%, right? Who can make that change?
Right.
If it's really a decentralized smart contract, you either have to launch a whole new protocol, right?
Okay,
So you had Uniswap v1, now I have to launch Uniswap v2.
So it'd be like, is that considered like a fork too?
It's not a fork because it's
just
not
like
a
an update?
blockchain.
It's like an update.
It's like an update, but like software, when your computer software updates, you just download the update. It gets rid of the old one and
Right.
replaces it with the new version,
But with
right?
this one, there is both.
But with this, there will always be the first version. If it's on a decentralized, immutable
Right.
platform,
You can choose to take the lower.
you can just choose to provide liquidity in the lower pool,
Yeah.
right? But you can't get rid of it. This is how they stay permissionless and censorship resistant. Once it's launched, it's there forever, right?
So the people who are providing liquidity in this example, they have a voting power.
They don't have any power right now. We haven't got to that part yet.
Okay.
They have one option at this point.
Okay.
They don't have their own token. They can launch a whole new smart contract. They can copy and paste it and then just change, except in this version, liquidity providers get 0.4%. That's the only difference. That's all they can do. But now me as a user, I have to know the difference because I'm going to see two different Uniswaps.
Right.
I'm going to see Uniswap v1 and Uniswap v2. And the difference is that pool. This is not the actual difference between Uniswap v1 and 2. This is
Okay.
just an
I
example.
was gonna ask.
But this is how that would work.
Okay.
That gets sloppy. So you have this concept of a DAO, right? So what this does is allows Uniswap to make their own token, distribute it to people however they can figure out how to distribute it to people, right? But now if you hold this DAO token, right, when you build the smart contract, you can say, look, this number is a variable. The percentage our liquidity providers receive is just a random variable. Right now it's 0.2%. But there are 100% of these DAO tokens, these uni tokens floating around. Somebody could submit a proposal to the smart contract, which is basically a yes/no question, right? Should this variable get bumped up to 0.4%, right? And this is all in the rules of when it was built, but if 51% of all the tokens say yes, change this variable automatically to 0.4. If 51% don't say yes, keep it the same, right? So now this uni token I'm holding, now I sort of have a say in how the protocol runs.
So you have to, if you, in that example, if you are a liquidity provider and you have Uniswap, you have to be a member of this DAO, or like, is that
you have
the
to
right
be a token holder
terminology?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so if you hold a token, you are part of the DAO regardless.
You'll have a vote.
So just DAO
Just like
basically
if
just
you had
means
Apple, you would hold a
you're
vote.
holding a token and you have a vote.
If you're a DAO token holder, right? And so there's some tokens, right? There's some projects who have an actual token that runs the project as the utility, and they have a secondary token that runs the vote.
And then do you have to purchase both of them, or do you get, like, if you buy one, you get 1-to-1? Like,
It depends. This
boy.
is all about DAOs.
okay, so this is not that episode.
Right. That goes into DAO structuring and how DAOs work. But that's sort of the
Okay.
closest you have, which also could be considered a security, the DAO token.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, because you can vote to increase your future.
Well, no, because most people
Value.
hold a DAO token because, look what you just said, how do you get it? You pay for it. If you pay for it, what are you really paying for? Are you paying for it because you want the right to vote? Or are you paying for it because you think this token's going to go up in value, right? And
Well, I
you
guess
want
it
to sell it
depends.
in the future for more dollars.
Well, I guess either way, you buy it because you want to secure your value and have. If you buy it because you just want to vote, you're still buying it because you want to either increase or have a say in the value of the coin that your token that you'd be voting on.
That's what everybody fighting the SEC is saying. But it doesn't make it true. But that goes down
It
the road of
seems
DAOs
true.
and how DAOs are structured. We
Yeah.
can get into that maybe on another episode. How DAOs are
wink.
structured, what is a DAO, and how they're structured.
Yeah.
But that's one way where, yes, crypto could sort of function like a stock. If you have ownership share of it, then yeah, you have this certain voting power. There's only 1,000 DAO voting tokens and you own 100 of them. You have 10% of the say of how that DAO is run. And that DAO, part of what that does is determines how the smart contract operates, right? So yeah, maybe that is sort of like owning a stock. But that opens up a whole nother realm of questions. You know what I mean? And then you have the last thing, which is the tokens, NFTs, stable coins, and whatnot,
Yeah.
and also very similar to that utility piece. So with like, you have this stable coin called DAI. It's originally it was not backed by dollars; it was backed by Ethereum, right?
Sure.
So, and you had, so for every Ethereum's price, I don't know what Ethereum's price is right now, let's say $2,000, right? So if you put in one Ethereum token, right, the system, the DAI system would spit you out, if you wanted them, $1,000 worth of stablecoin dollars. So
So
for
it
every
would give you
two,
half?
it would give you half.
Okay.
Because it was a balancing pool. That's how they avoided having dollars in a bank.
They need.
And if the
half
price of
liquidity
Ethereum
and
went
half-
down,
Okay.
you'd have to put in more ETH, or you'll lose the ETH. You'll always keep the stable coins, but you'll lose the ETH. You can always swap the ETH. If you don't lose it, you
Yeah.
can always swap the ETH and dollars back and forth. Because if the price of ETH goes up, right,
Would that be like considered giving yourself a loan?
it's similar-ish.
It seems like, why would you want to do that if you have
Well,
run
yeah,
the risk of losing it?
It's sort of like doing it because you don't want to risk. If you own some Ethereum, right? You bought a bunch of it during the last bottom in the last bear market for $80.
Yeah.
Right before it went up to like 10,000.
Yeah.
Right. Now it's at 3,000, and you don't want to sell it, but you need some cash to pay rent, and they're not going to take ETH, and you don't really want to get rid of the ETH anyway.
Right.
Yeah. You could essentially borrow you to put your ETH in, borrow the DAI or get the DAI. You're not borrowing it, you're just swapping it.
Yeah.
Pay your rent, and then
go to work, make
assuming the price of ETH goes up higher, your amount gets sort of lower. You pay the $1,000 back, you get the ETH back, right? And so you didn't really lose the ETH, you didn't lose the opportunity cost. So you could think of it like a loan.
Is that what can you do that now, or that's not?
That's basically how it works. But DAI is a token. Right, it's a stable coin. The mechanism that runs that, putting it in and taking it out and all that, that's called Maker DAO. It's another DAO. And if you hold the Maker token, you get to decide what that threshold of ETH to dollars is. Maybe it's not just ETH, like it's not just ETH anymore. So it's ETH and USDC, and there's all these other things in the basket that you use for collateral.
Yeah, they're really complicated things, huh?
It does get complicated, right? But
and when you said threshold,
similar.
That's kind of like the ratio too, right? Like
Okay. Like I said, if you put one ETH in, if you put one ETH for $2,000 in, you get $1,000 out.
Okay,
so
just want to make sure I'm understanding it.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's how that works.
So then basically the answer is no. Only ones that are like, the only cryptos that are like stocks would be the ones that are like DAOs.
Yeah, I would say actually the answer is maybe.
Like everything else.
Like
Nothing
everything
is
else.
clear. We don't know.
Maybe.
We all leave the exact same way we came in.
Right. On its face.
Unclear answer.
On its face, and as it was intended originally when it was built, it does not on its face act like a stock, right? You do not get a say based off of how many tokens you hold. And I would say, again, theoretically speaking, if every token's intent and decentralization was anywhere near adequate, then most of them, no, it doesn't equal a say.
Yeah.
Right? However, even in that world, there is a subset that do actually represent a say or an ownership share. But maybe it's just a say and not an ownership share. Maybe it's an ownership share and not a say. Right. It really can get technical, and it's why you sort of need to do your own research. I think that's episode 3 or something, and figure it out what it is before you get involved in the project.
Yeah. Well, I guess
because there could be legal liability.
What do you mean?
Well, you take something like if you do have a share, if you buy some kind of crypto, and you do have a say like you do Apple, and then that smart contract, even though it's just whatever you want to call it, right, decentralized or whatever, if that protocol does something illegal in the jurisdiction that you live in,
oh shit,
they come knocking on your door. Yeah. So there's been some DAO situations, and DAOs are the most at risk. That's why you should, if we do a show on DAOs, you should follow up on that show. Right, for following up. Like recently, I think it was the commodities. I don't know why the acronym's leaving my head, but the commodity, not the SEC, but the commodities one, CFTC. No, yeah. If they
Federal Trades FTC, no.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
There was a DAO, and you had all these people making this vote, and then they all meet in Discord, right? And so they dropped a notice in the Discord. The government dropped a notice in the Discord and said, hey, look, you guys are all DAOs. This thing is illegal as hell. I don't care that you call yourself a DAO. You're an unregistered corporation.
Dang.
And you're breaking the law. And all of you are on the hook. Anybody who holds tokens is on the hook.
Were they all like
this is your summons. Well, it becomes tricky now, right? They can do that, but it becomes this tricky thing. Like, whether there's any anonymity built into it. How do they prove it? What if you don't live in this jurisdiction? What if you're not a U.S. citizen? There's a lot of questions coming along, but there can be Tornado Cash. That was another big one that's still undergoing ways. The developers built Tornado Cash, which was an Ethereum mixer. It lets you put Ethereum in, get Ethereum out, but it breaks the ties between you and like a Coinbase or some KYC exchange or whatever.
To give you anonymity.
Right? I feel like Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
It's an anonymity. They are the two key developers of that are now like in prison, awaiting court dates.
That's so silly. Why? Because the government wanted to know.
They want to know everything about it, and they're like, "You guys help North Korea out." Because North Korea used it. But the reason they're on the hook, so far as we can tell, as far as I can tell, not a legal expert here, but as far as I can tell from all the legal proceedings that's happened, it's because they started Tornado Cash, and then what did they go and do? Oh, we need to make some changes. Only way to really do that in a decentralized way, start a DAO.
Oh, no.
Who owns most of the DAO tokens? Them. Right?
Okay.
You two, I don't care how decentralized your smart contract is,
Yeah.
you two make decisions on protocol changes. Therefore, you can allow or disallow.
Right.
And this is that old Andreas talk. Can't versus won't.
Right.
So one thing, you launch this mixer, it's code. Maybe you fall into free speech. You can't change anything.
Right.
Oh, no, you're a DAO, so you just won't change it?
Right.
Watch.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
If you haven't checked that out, Andreas Antonopoulos, YouTube, Andreas, can't versus won't.
Yeah. It's really good.
So, yeah, that is it.
Yeah.
So our stocks, our cryptos like stocks?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, because I feel like everybody, like, I don't want to say everybody, but like the mainstream people who think they know about crypto and stocks, it's all about number go up. And so I feel like it's a way to make money. So then that's why they're like, oh, they're the same.
Right.
But then it seems like maybe they don't understand stocks either.
Probably not. Most people don't understand most things, even if they're experts in that thing.
Yeah.
So I can tell you things like Bitcoin are not stocks. Things in a proof of stake system can maybe, depends on how the proof of stake system's set up. And then anything built on top of a layer one is very likely could be considered, depends on what it does. So a Bitcoin is a no, a Monero is a no, an Ethereum is probably not, but maybe. Same thing with like an Avalanche, maybe, but probably. Versus, something built on those, a DAO built on top of something in the Cosmos ecosystem. Sure, maybe. The DAO might be.
But that would be like a case-by-case basis.
It's all a case-by-case.
We'd be here all day for the rest of our lives.
Yep. We could maybe make that a game show type episode. Is it a stock?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, if you got more questions or disagree and think it's all stocks or none of it's stocks, how can they come yell at me?
We are on TikTok with our handle is @TheBlockument, and we're also on Twitter or X, whichever you prefer to call it.
All right.
We are on Facebook. We're not going to reference its new name.
Facebook has a new name?
Isn't it Meta?
Oh, the parent company, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. So that's like an alphabet. Google.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's surprising. I know that's about the only thing I know about Facebook. I don't mess with it.
Well, that's good to know.
Besides when you make me.
Yeah, we're on YouTube and anywhere you can listen to podcasts.
All right. So check it out. We'll maybe have some notes or something or links to other things at theblockhuman.com.
Yep.
If I remember to put it up. And until next time, come for the riches.
Stay for the revolution.
Viva la revolution. Peace.
Peace.